we have decided to conduct a life interview for the both of you. So we will always cherish and honor your life. This will be made into a video that we can share with our families and future families. Okay, we love you both and we're really excited about this video.
Thank you, family, for doing this legacy. It's a very nice thing to have for the future, for your children and grandchildren. Yes, my name was Della Albert Zaher when I married, but I was born Della Albert, and I was born in March the 3rd, 1932. And I was born in a little house that my family had in the Little River area. So we didn't have, it was a rented house. I wasn't born in a hospital. So I was the second daughter of 4 children, and my name, Della, I was named after my grandmother, and her name was Della, and they just shortened it to Della. And I grew up a very, very happy child in a very nice family. And then I went to Florida State, and I became a majorette there. And I was very active. I was in the circus. Florida State has a special student circus. And I was in a sorority called Alpha Xi Delta. So I had a lot of fun in college, but yet I did very well. And I went on to finish. And I guess that's the time I met Joe. I was getting ready to go to college, and one day my aunt came into town, and she was visiting my mother, and she said, "Do you think you could take me to see a real dear friend of mine that lives in the Southwest section?" I said, "Of course, I'll drive you there." So I went, and they had a market, a grocery store, and there were 2 young men in there working with them, and that was their sons. So I met Frank and I met Joe. Joe did all the talking. Frank just sort of sat back and listened. And Joe did all the talking and talking with me and whatever. So he said, "Well, what are you getting ready to do?" And I said, "I'm going to college." He said, "That's a waste." He said, "You know, women should never go to college. All they do is get married and have kids." And I thought, wow, is he opinionated? That's the last time I want to see him. So I told my mother on the way home, I said, "I don't think I'll see him again." So I went away to school, and when I came home for Thanksgiving, I got this call, and he said, "Hi, I'm Joe." And I said, "Joe? Joe who?" He said, "You remember, you met me in the grocery store?" And so he said, "Do you think you'd like to go out?" And I asked my mother, I said, "Do you think I should really do that?" She said, "Certainly." So I went out, and our first date, we went to this theater in South Beach. And the opening scene was a bedroom scene. And it just, I thought, what in the world has he taken me to? And he said, "Oh, you know, I didn't know the name of the play." He said, "But I just thought maybe it would be good to see." And I sat through that thing, and then I went home and I said, "I don't want to see him again." So then, of course, I did when he called me again, and we went out, and I guess that's where it started. And then the one thing I promised my mom and dad was that I would never get married until I graduated from college. So I graduated May 30th, and we got married June 20th. And of course I got engaged in January, and we had a wonderful engagement party. In fact, I still have the dress I wore, believe it or not. And
I was born in Jacksonville, Florida. I had 3 older sisters named Mary, Lula, and Della. And then I had a younger brother who's 2 years younger than I am. My father's name was Esse, E-S-S-E, Joseph Zaher. Well, when I was born, there was a tradition in the family that if you had a first son, your first son would be named the opposite of the first and middle name. So my dad's name was Esse Joseph Zaher. So that meant that my name would be the opposite, Joseph E.C. Zaher. And it went all the way back to generations that they switched the first name and the middle name. My father's father in Syria was like a mayor, and he was very well known. So the Zaher name in Syria was known by a lot of the Syrians and so forth. So that's how I got my name of Joseph E.C. Zaher. Well, when I had my son, just to advance a little bit, I had to name my son E.C. Joseph Zaher after my father, but I didn't, so I broke the tradition. And my mother never forgot that why did I do that? I said, well, I didn't want to give my son an easy first name. Oh, anyway, we pronounced the easy to easy, which was easier to assimilate, and I got drafted into service. So knowing Della when meeting her, I did propose to Della, and she said, well, we were pretty much in love. And I told her being married to Della, and I always count my blessings, because I think being married to Della was probably the greatest gift ever given to me. And that's why that'll get you nothing.
When Joe went into the service for a year, and then we finally, we got married in June 20th, 1954, and we lived in this very small apartment in that Little River area. We rented it.
One bedroom.
And so, and then we had our first child, wonderful little girl, and we named her Andrea, and her middle name was Lee, named after my sister.
Well, let's see, Andrea, I knew Andrea someday would be who she is today, because as a child, you know these little bouncy horses?
Yeah, very active.
Nobody ever rode that horse off the pavement like Andrea did. She was fast, quick. Also, all the relatives loved Andrea because she had a personality unknown to others. I mean, she was unique.
Of course, 3 years later, we had Mark.
Mark was also very, very smart. And so Andrea and Mark, sometimes Della and I, we would drive 40 miles to take education classes, and Della would call home, and Andrea would say, "Get Mark out of my room. He's in my room." And they would be fighting like cats and dogs because Mark would agitate her or whatever. But anyway, both Andrea and Mark were really fun kids and outgoing kids. And one of the things I remember the relatives most was when we'd go to church, we went to church, to a common church where all the relatives of mine and Della's would go to. Well, Andrea would go around the men and pull on the back of their jackets and then run to the other side, so when they turned around, they wouldn't know who pulled on their shirts. And then they'd see Andrea. And so they had a lot of fun with Andrea. But Andrea couldn't sit still in the church. I'd have to put my hand on her and pinch her, because she's, always wanted to move around. And Mark was the same way. Growing up, they were both pretty much, I would say, typical brother and sister. And we had, I enjoyed raising both of them because they were fun kids, and they had excellent values. They weren't into a lot of stuff, any of that kind of stuff that kids today are in.
I was born March the 3rd, 1932.
Okay, Dad, when were you born?
February the 9th, 1928.
They were born in Homs, Syria.
Mother.
Well, my father was born in Syria.
I would say that they were very family oriented, and we always tried to sit together at dinner, even though they had a grocery store and worked 14 hours. But I think that, and my mother was a wonderful cook, and I always had fond memories of her making wonderful meals for all of us.
Anyway, my mother was also very religious. She was an outstanding cook. And in fact, she would bake and cook Arabic food for people, and she would sell it. And in Jacksonville, she was very well known for making desserts. We never received a spanking. My father never admonished us, but my mother was very strict.
It's hard.
I was a pretty good child.
Okay, all right, good.
I was very fortunate that I was able to meet my grandmother, because my father took me to South America where she was there, and in fact each one of our siblings had a chance to do that.
Well, I remember my grandparents just very, very well, because I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. My grandmother was absolutely a saint. My grandfather was an outstanding businessman and very innovative in business.
Yeah, my dad loved to have some type of thing. We didn't have dogs, but we had a goat.
Okay.
And drank
and we
milk.
had chickens in the backyard, but he didn't like to have dogs or cats. So he was sort of like an outdoors kind of a person with those type of, not domesticated. I was very quiet.
Okay.
And very, I sort of kept to myself. I love to read.
Opposite of Della.
Okay.
And maybe that's why opposites attract.
First.
An electric train
Okay.
put around the Christmas tree.
Okay, perfect. Mom?
A very beautiful doll that I have, and I still have.
During the teen years, I wanted to go to West Point.
Okay, so you wanted to do that. Mom?
I've always wanted to be a teacher. In the 9th grade, I was in the Future Teachers of America Club, and I always wanted to be a teacher.
A phone?
Well, we
money?
did not have cell phones. We did not have iPads. We did not have any way of communicating other than the telephone that we shared with another party. In other words, another party would be on the same line. And when you picked up the phone, you had to make sure that the other party wasn't talking before you picked up and made your call.
All right.
So, but we didn't have any of those modern conveniences. We didn't have computers in the schools or at home.
Just a couple of things. I did take typewriting in school, and the only reason I took it is I found out that's where all the girls took.
Okay, good. Good.
I always aspired to be in education and to be a teacher,
Okay.
and to make my father proud because he worked so hard to put me through school.
Okay.
And I did promise him I would finish.
Okay.
And I never wanted to go, particularly at that time, in administration, but I eventually did.
When I found out I was not going to be a West Pointer, I did love the theater though, and loved managing the theater. So I thought that would be where my life and career would always be.
I went to Florida State University, the Seminoles.
Well, I went to University of Miami, and I also finished high school in the service. I was drafted in 1953. I did my basic training in Camp Polk, Louisiana, and then I was sent to Fort Riley, Kansas And because I could type and I knew how to drill, I was assigned to the headquarters division. And later, I became an aide to the commanding general of the base, and I became his protocol chief. Protocol chief meant that you're the only one probably on the base that could tell the general where to go, because if he had a speaking engagement in town and meeting with the mayor, I'd have to go to the mayor and find out what's he like to talk about, what he doesn't want to talk about. Those are all protocol things that I did, and I liked doing that in the service, but I certainly didn't want to make a career in the military. Well, I thought Della was of all the girls I had gone with and met, I thought Della was a very sincere kind of person, and of course, knowing families had a lot to do with it too. But I thought Della was very attractive. I saw a lot of wholesomeness. I saw a lot of loyalty, and I saw a lot of. I looked at Della in terms of as I don't know if she shares or not, but I looked at Della as a mother. That if I had to have children someday, she would be a wonderful mother.
That's sweet.
You know. I was in a bar.
What's Ruth?
No.
And did you ask her parents?
No.
No, I didn't ask her parents. I didn't propose per se. We just went together, and I thought we didn't have anything, and I told my sister I wanted to get engaged to Della because that was the only way I know our relationship would be assured or guaranteed. Because I saw so many situations where people were just madly in love with each other, and later on they separated and went different ways. So I got a ring through my sister, and one night we were out and I just gave her the ring.
Did you get
and she accepted it.
No.
Did you get
Oh,
on
no,
one
I think
knee?
he did it in a car.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we got engaged in January and we got married in June. We had about 300 people. We did serve Syrian food, and I'll never forget. We had the green beans and rice, and chicken, and some of the kibbe. But I was so excited, and I wanted to greet everybody that I never ate. I'll never forget, I never ate my own meal at my wedding reception. But the wedding itself, it was held in a church in the south end of town, in an Episcopal church.
In Miami?
In Miami, yeah. And we got married in that church. We had a wonderful bridal party. I had my sisters and a cousin that came in from South America that was in there, and a young flower girl. So it was a lovely wedding itself.
Our wedding was mostly all families, and I think my greatest moment of all was when I saw Della come down the aisle. She was just, I thought to myself, man, are you lucky? Because she was just absolutely beautiful, and I thought,
You never told me that.
and I thought, wow, I guess I finally did it, and it was who I really wanted to spend the rest of my life with.
I think we're very much alike. We have the same values, and we're very trustworthy, and I think we love each other. So you want to make sure that that person will always be with you, and that you will take care of each other. And I think we're so much alike, and we both love to shop, and he loves to shop, which is very unusual for a man. So we love to do the same things. We're very, very compatible in that respect. Well, I would say that Andrea was very smart and very precocious and outgoing. And I think one of the cutest stories that I can remember about her, and there's many, but the one that I thought, we went to an Easter egg hunt, and she was running all over getting these eggs, and then I saw her take eggs out of somebody else's basket and put it in her basket. And I thought, that was pretty smart. But she always did cute little things. And another thing, we went to visit some relatives in Jacksonville, and she was about 4 or 5, and we were there in the living room talking, and she was sort of bored. So they had a fenced-in backyard, and I said, well, she could go out there and just, and she did, and all of a sudden she comes in, and she has a bunch of flowers in her hand. She had picked all of the relatives' flowers. And I thought my aunt would just go crazy. But she was very creative, and she's been creative her whole life. And so, and we've always, enjoyed that type of, it's very enlightening as far as a parent to have a child that's independent, has a mind of her own, and knows what she wants. And so, basically, that's the kind of child she was, and that's who she's grown up to be.
The best story I can tell about Mark and myself is the fact that I had a car that had a leak in the trunk. And I'd look 1,000 times and couldn't find out where the leak came from. We were working on the car. I said, Mark, I'm gonna get in the trunk. You take the water hose and you spray it over the trunk, and then I will, I'll see where, you can tell me where I'll tell you where the leak is. So I get in the trunk, he closes the trunk, runs a water hose over the back of the trunk, and I finally see where the leak's coming from. So I knock on the trunk and I say, okay, Mark, I know where it is. You can let me out now. And he said, well, I don't, where's the keys? And I said, stop playing games with me. Let me out of the trunk. And he said, Dad, I don't have the keys. And I said, Mark, stop all that teasing. You got the keys. Open the trunk. I'll suffocate in here. He said, Dad, I don't have the keys. So I'm reaching around, and all of a sudden the keys are in my pocket with me in the trunk. Now,
the end of that story, I have to tell the end of that story. When they constantly worked on cars together, there was always some kind of disagreement or something. And I saw them working on cars, and I was going to go to the grocery store, and I said, you know what? I better wait until they're finished. And I happened to have a copy of the key. So, but they worked together on a lot of things.
That's cute.
Yes.
Happiness, joy, satisfaction.
I think your whole life, when you have children, is keeping them safe and in good health, and enjoying them also. And we always had a good time with both of the kids because they were so easy to please, not demanding, not whatever.
Trying to meet their needs, which were a lot different than yours, and keeping up with the technology.
I think that the hardest part is making sure that they are all in the right company. In other words, their peers have a great influence over each other.
Yeah.
And so you always had to be one step ahead in order to make sure that they have chosen the right friends and in being in the right company and doing the right thing. And that's a big job.
Who's your favorite grandchild?
The best part about, oh my goodness. It's a lot easier. You can just love them and leave them. No, I think that's the greatest joy, that you're still on this good earth to enjoy your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. And I can't say enough positive things about, grandchildren. They're just not, it's not the same as having your own children, because you're not really in charge, but you're enjoying every minute that you can be with them, and they're all precious.
Okay.
Oh, I also think that I enjoy doing things with grandchildren, like giving them experiences, taking them places. For example, I spend a lot of time coming to Wichita, going to see Brent and Corey play tennis, and being with Jordan, who was Jordan was a lot like Grandma in a lot of ways in personality, sort of quiet, but extremely smart, and very lovable. And I think all of my grandchildren, they're unique. They are not really alike at all. They all have their individuality. And what I wanted to do in life with my grandchildren was to take them places and give them as many experiences in life. And of course, hopefully that they would wind up with as good a spouses as Della and I's life. And of course, that was well done with our grandchildren as well.
I have to add that I think the great satisfaction is to seeing your grandchildren succeed.
That's right.
I mean, we have gotten so much joy out of watching Courtney play soccer, Teal play tennis. We haven't been, and Grandpa and I, going as many times as we could to watch Corey and Brent play tennis. I mean, you can't imagine how gratifying it is to say, hey, that's my grandchild playing out there. And they all did so well, we were very proud of them. And I failed to say, about our grandchildren. But one experience that I had, and I have to say it because it's very important, that Jordan spent 4 or 5 summers with Grandpa and I. And you talked about grandchildren, and that is you love your children, but your grandchildren, and I think that experience was very gratifying for her and for us, and that was, and I just wanted to point that out. How am I like my mother? Well, I learned a lot of cooking from her. As far as our personality, I would say that I have more traits from my mother than my father, but I was very close to both of them. And my father had only a 6th grade education, and my mother only had a 3rd grade, but they were both very smart. So I enjoyed being with my father because he was always looking for educational things to say to you. And at the dinner table, he would always ask questions about the world and see if we could answer them. So I guess, just being close to them in that respect. They were very busy parents, working.
Yeah. Okay, Grandpa?
Probably, my mother was probably the most, the strongest from other than my dad was not very strong. As I mentioned earlier, he was not a very well man. But my mother pretty much, I have a lot of traits of my mother. She was very hardworking. She was very neat. Our home was always immaculate. And she was a great cook, which I'm not, obviously. But anyway, I think I learned a lot of values, though, from my father, because he had a lot of wonderful values. I think I don't really think our children are I think they have our value systems. Uh, and I think our children are obviously very bright. I think Andrea and Mark grew up together as just wonderful children. But I really think, all in all, that our children, in a lot of respects, especially their demeanor, are a reflection of Della and I both.
Yeah, I think of the two children, Andrea is very much like me. She just has the same personality, the same, it's just that she's like a clone of me. And I think that because I think mother-daughter relationship has been wonderful. And I'm very proud of the way she has raised her children. And Andrea is very much like me. And I hope that, and I think that she realizes that. And you try very, very hard to make both of your children with the same values and things. And mother-daughter relationships are very important. My best qualities, I guess, is my value system.
Okay.
And generosity, being very generous and kind to people who need help. And, that's very important.
Well, one of my best qualities, I think, are leadership.
Yeah, that's good.
Because even as a youngster, as I told you, being in the school board patrol, I was always in a leadership role there.
My worst qualities, it's hard when you're perfect, but my worst qualities. Probably some of the phobias that I have. I wish I didn't have some of the phobias I've got.
Some of my things that I have a tendency at this stage in my life, not earlier, but at this stage in my life to procrastinate on things. And I'm working on trying to not be a procrastinator.
Okay.
Let's see. Because I was a very determined person to succeed in education, and I rightly did so. And I guess I should say, that I was the principal of the year nationally, and our school was nationally recognized as one of the best schools in the nation.
I think the
Compliment.
best compliment I ever received was the state organizations that involved working with students and all, that a legacy would be established in my name for the dedication and hard work that I did in helping students succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was given a legacy award for that, and was told that that would be a legacy that will be with me forever. So
Well, because you said tomorrow, and at our age, we can't really do too much that you would enjoy other than seeing your children enjoy it. So I would help Mark and his children. I would help Andrea and her children. I would just help family. And I would also make donations to organizations that need money, particularly St. Jude, and just places that would benefit from large sums of money. I think that when you work so hard to raise your own children, the most pleasure, it's not something that Joe and I do, but what your children do. And it gives me great satisfaction to see Mark raise his children and try to do what's best for them. Andrea, the same way. And I just get real pleasure out of grandchildren and then also seeing great-grandchildren. And that's my greatest pleasure. I don't look upon, gee, I wish we were traveling, or I wish Joe and I, because we have done everything that we feel that we could do as a married couple. We will be married 63 years on June the 20th. And in other years, we have traveled to 36 countries. So I really feel that now you look to the future of your future generation, which is getting to know that they are well on their way to being successful.
I get the greatest satisfaction nowadays of knowing that not only my daughter and my son have raised wonderful children, but to see your grandchildren also move into the next generation and bringing up families and the life that they'll have. Mm-hmm. Like I'm just so happy that to see, like you, Corey, find a wonderful husband whom I love dearly, and to see Jordan and Nick, who I love dearly as well, and know that someday they'll have a family too, and wishing I could live long enough to be a part of that, and especially knowing now that Bradley has that we have 2 great grandchildren. Mm-hmm. Which is another satisfaction. So see families grow and develop like you did, like I did in Della, is my greatest satisfaction.
With a third on the way.
Yeah, right.
We just enjoy the simple things. We've done all the tough things when we were younger, the traveling, going through all the hassles. And now we just enjoy our company with each other. Going to lunch, going to the movies, going over to Mark's house for dinner. We can't see all of you that live in Wichita right away, but we have been there. So it's a much family as you can see, mm-hmm. without any, great burden as far as doing all the things when you were younger.
But I think the most satisfaction to me is to not by my own direction or Della's direction, is to see how your children, Andrea and Mark, and your grandchildren, see how they're developing their life and families as well, is to me the most rewarding part of my life at this stage of life.
If you live another 20 to 30 years, what will you do? What will you do? Do you want to live another 20, 30 years? What would you look for? What do you look forward to?
I'll go back to the same premise. I've got to be in good health or pull the plug.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
wrong question to ask.
I don't think young people understand what good health is.
You're right, yeah.
You have to start when you're young, and it's not very important when you're growing up, because you want to eat what you want to drink what you want, and all those things. But then when you get older, you suffer for it. So fortunately, we have had the kind of lives that we've led, not being drinkers or smokers and eating reasonably good food. And so I don't want to live 20 or 30 years unless I have good health.
Okay.
Tell Moses to part the waters for me so I can get on the other side.
Okay.
family.
Well,
As
I
both
guess
of you.
because we're in Florida for Joe's birthday and my birthday, I think we celebrated with Mark and his family.
Mhm.
And that's been a tradition. And that's has been very helpful to us to be with family, and very important that we celebrate each year. And we're always very sorry that we can't meet with you guys at the same time. But that's been a tradition. And, they really celebrate our birthdays in a very nice way. I think one of the things that we've discovered when you say about traditions, it is amazing that we've been able to obtain such a wonderful relationship with Andrea and her family, all of our grandchildren, and yet we live so far. And I think that children make the effort to do things with you. And that's why it's so gratifying to have such a wonderful family, because they care about you. Mark in his way, because we're there, does it and doesn't forget us, and you guys don't forget us, and you're here today. It just makes us feel so happy. You can't imagine how a parent or grandparent feels when your grandchildren love you enough to be able to want to be with you. And that's rare, I think, in today's society, because sometimes elderly people, grandparents, get left behind. And that hasn't happened with all of our children.
So you can do too if you would like.
I would say probably trying to make a living so you could give your children, a kind of life that you would want them to have, and have the finances to be able to let them do it, like go to college, get married, or whatever. Was to always try to build a financial standing to where you can do the things that you know are important in raising a family, and also helping them to of better things in life. And that's a struggle. It's always a struggle. But I also learned in that process that there is never a good time for anything. And we even thought about sometimes delaying raising of children. And now we have friends that waited so long to have children. Now they have no children to be with or leave things to. So it doesn't really boil down to the tears and sweat that you did to say, well, I gotta wait till I get money for this or money for that. You
Never comes.
you do things when you do things in spite of that, and it works itself out.
Yeah.
Well, when you go away to college, you don't spend as much time with your parents because you're away. And I have wonderful memories of my parents, but I always wish they lived longer so that they could enjoy the things that we're enjoying now. I mean, I couldn't do anything about it, but I don't have any regrets that I haven't been with them. But I just think that you always want your loved ones to be around forever, and I would just like to share that, and you can't do that, and it's a regret, but I have no control over it. You know? I would just remember my dad saying, do your best, and he always had this saying, if you say something, make sure you're 100% right. Not 99, not 98%. Don't say it unless you say, I'm 100% right. And I embedded that in my brain. And he always said, It's easier to tell the truth than to lie. If you lie, you don't. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember your lies.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always taught to be truthful and to just do the right thing, and that has embedded me my whole life.
I just remember my mother knowing Della and her family, and that when we were going together, that my mother said to me, Joe, don't let that girl slip away from you. And we saw that so many times. Couples that, whatever, that after being together a while would just separate and go their own different ways. So I just remember my mother standing over me like right now, and I was sitting down and she was standing up, and that's when she pointed a finger at me. And she loved Della tremendously, especially knowing her family, and just pointed the finger at me and says, don't you let that girl slip away from you. And it worked.
That's cute.
Forget about materialism.
And I would say, do the right thing every time.
Materials are material things. Just 4 letters, L-O-V-E.
That's cute.
Yeah, and I think that's very important that you spread that love word around, not only with family, but also with your job.
Yeah.
If you're in a job that you don't love, leave it. And I think that there's a saying that Helen Keller has. It's not what you see or what you hear, but it's what's in your heart.
Yeah.
And if you do things from your heart, you will be a good person the rest of your life. I think that I would like them to remember that we loved each one of you very much. And that I hope that they lead as good a life as we have had. And they always think of each other.
I would say probably remember that the greatest thing that you can grow up is to try to emulate a lot of the beliefs that your parents have, and because they are with you whether you know it or not. And you always want to do the right thing. It is so easy to deviate from the path of righteousness, which will lead you nowhere. But to do the right things, stay away from those things that can impact your present life, and always be loyal. I think loyalty is very important, and I also think that when you do don't, and like it says in the Lord's Prayer, and lead me not into temptation, because it's out there, and if you're tempted, you're not going to have a happy, joyous life. So always do the right thing. Take this video, listen to it very carefully, and see how your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, what was the rule of life that they lived by, and try to follow it, because it is perfect. Don't deviate again from the path of righteousness, and emulate all the wonderful things that they did, and be extremely thankful and grateful, and don't screw up your life in some other way. It's just not going to be that way, because I truly believe that God is with me every moment of the day, And I can give you many, many examples of situations to prove that some of the things that you've done and do are because God and Jesus is right there with you.
And I would put in the capsule, and I think I would just emulate what Joe said. But I would also put in the capsule that whenever you make a decision, be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. Just be yourself. And that love conquers all. And that love what you're doing. Love the people you live with. And just, that's a very important word. Love, L-O-V-E. And I think in the capsule, just be yourself. And look to the future. And take care of yourself when you're young so that you will have a wonderful life as you get older.
And be grateful.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful that you want to know our legacy. And I hope that whomever is going to look at it will gain some kind of insight as to the kind of life that we had. We didn't cover everything, but it's very important to know your, you know.
Is there anything that you'd like to add since we didn't cover everything?
Well, I think,
In the last 5 hours.
Well, I didn't cover the fact how much my mother and dad sacrificed to get to this country so they could live a normal life and being a U.S. citizen. And they sacrificed a lot traveling abroad and coming here, and I didn't go into my parents' life, but it's because of our parents that we are here. And that's very important that you know how much they sacrificed. And I think Joe went into it to some degree with his family. But that's the only thing I would like to add, is that we enjoy each other while we're here, and that there are, as always, an angel by your side. I have an angel that saved me from the waters one time, and if it wasn't for that angel, I wouldn't be here today. So believe the sacrifice. So yes.
I like to reflect when you look at two people like Della and myself, and you look around and you see those around you, and you say to each other, did you ever think that a marriage and a union with the two of you,
63 years,
that nobody else in this room would not be here?
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't be here at all. So when you look at yourselves, your marriage, and your children's children, you look back and you look in the mirror and you say, you know, if it wasn't for Della and Joe, I wouldn't even be here. I would be non-existent. And that covers a lot of people, and how one union of two people can generate hundreds, back all the way to the years of Adam and Eve.
All right, good job. We're done.
You didn't have the baby yet.
I know, yeah.
And there was a guy across the street, a black young man. His name was Eugene Butler, and he was an educator and became very, very famous. So.
Okay. And that, okay, good. That was, sorry. Okay. Sorry.
Gosh, Mom, that was a big one.
Okay. Sean Markham was perfect chair.
Sorry.
I would always tease myself though about her legs were so. When she told me she was in the circus, I said, "How did anybody pick you up?" You know. But anyway, no, we never grew up with any animals, and My brother Frank sometimes just one, but
And
That's right.
if you, did you hear that?
Yeah.
well,
That's one of the.
We can do it after.
That's one of the. But Joe is right. God is always there for you, and just remember that.